Hello and welcome into another edition of State of the Sun Devils alongside Jesse Morrison and Damon Allred. I'm Jeremy Schnell. ASU loses to Texas Tech 30-22. Made it a little bit interesting at the end, but ASU could not get the onside kick to get the ball back and make it even more interesting at the end. Let's talk about what just happened in this football game, guys. It really started off not great for ASU in the game. It looked very sloppy at the beginning of the game. There was obviously the interception thrown by Sam Levitt where he overthrew two wide open wide receivers in the area. There was some pressure on that play. We could say not 100% of Sam Levitt's fault, but sloppy defense, a lot of wide open passes over the middle of the field for Morton. What is your takeaway from just the start of the game and how it contributed to the overall loss for ASU, Damon?
Yeah, it feels like last week the ASU was able to have a really good response when it was faced with some adversity. And this week, the opening haymaker that Texas Tech threw was a little bit tougher than the haymaker Texas State threw at the start of last week. And just between the sack on Sam's first drop back that looked really tough of a hit and the interception that came right after. I mean, it was just a bad start, and then you start getting drops from the receivers and missed throws and penalties about like bad discipline and over celebrating and things like that, and just stuff that's like very uncharacteristic of what this ASU team has shown us through 3 games. And so obviously the fourth one, we get a little bit of resetting the expectations.
Yeah, for me, it just kind of was a bad start on all 3 phases of the game. So you get the opening kickoff, it's out of bounds. It's, they get the ball immediately at the 35, and then Texas Tech marched down the field, they score a touchdown. And then ASU gets the ball immediately. There's the sack, which was a really big hit on Sam, and then Sam throws the interception, also takes a big hit on that play as well, and then Texas Tech gets the ball back, scores again. So for me, it was just, offense, defense, and special teams just from the start did not look good. I thought ASU responded okay in this game. This game was just a lot different than I thought it would be.
I think what we thought was ASU is going to be able to run all over Texas Tech. They gave the ball to Cam Scatterbo 18 times, only 16 rushing yards, had the 2 touchdowns, but both of those were inside of 5 yards.
60 rushing yards.
Yeah, what did I say?
16.
Oh, my fault. 18 carries for 60 yards. Obviously, the 2 touchdowns came within a side of 5 yards. But I was expecting Scatterbo, if he has 18 touches, to go over 100 yards. He had the 117 receiving yards. Most of that came on one play. But for Scatterbo and the offensive line, I think today was on the offensive line. A lot of pressure on Levitt, a lot of pressure on Scatterbo to break tackles, and that's just not what we've seen in the first 3 games of the season.
Yeah, and right guard Cade Briggs, former Red Raider, goes down late in this game, so we'll have to see what happens there. But obviously, you don't want to lose one of your starting offensive linemen when the run game is as important to your team as it is for ASU. But I think Cade Briggs has been incredible for a lot of this season so far, so I think that it'd be a huge loss if he's out for any stretch of time. But obviously the bye week coming up, it's going to help with them having the short week recently and being able to recuperate after that.
I just expected Texas Tech to be a way worse defensive team than they were in this game, and the numbers backed it up. What I watched on tape backed that up. That run that they gave up to Mateer in the Washington State game, you just didn't see that today. And this team,
you saw flashes of it.
Yeah, you saw
on the big run by Scatterbo.
Yeah, you saw flashes of it, but it wasn't as. It just didn't seem like. It seemed like they tackled pretty well in this game, and I was just surprised that ASU was limited to 22 points. I mean, ASU has shown that they can score this year. I definitely think that the expectations are a little bit more down after this game, just because this was the first Big 12 game in ASU history, first of the season, obviously, and it showed that these Big 12 teams probably are going to be tough for ASU, and they only have to go 3-6 in the conference, but this game was just different than I expected. I'm surprised that ASU only put up 22 points. I have some issues with how they, some of the calls in this game, play calls, what they did there,
Pass interference
and
calls.
some questionable officiating, but not that bad. It was a pretty well officiated game
On both sides, yes.
On both sides, yeah.
Let me ask you this though, Jesse. When you say that you were surprised about how ASU couldn't score that much on Texas Tech, only scoring 22 points, do you think that's because Texas Tech played better, or you think that's execution on ASU?
I think it's a little bit of both. I mean, we mentioned the drops. I think that ASU's receiving core, wide receivers, tight ends, the running backs can catch out of the backfield. They showed that.
Especially on the final drive.
Cam Scadaboo, 117 yards receiving. He had a 66-yard catch. But Malik McClain looked like he could have caught that big bomb at the end of the first half from Levitt. Looked like it kind of went through his hands. He had the illegal touching. That was a first down. You saw Shimon Mater have kind of a mixed bag game. He had some really good plays, and then he had some plays where you're like, that you needed to catch that ball. And so I think that the receiving game has to step up. And I think that Melquan Stovall and Xavier Guillory, because Xavier Guillory had a good game, I'd like to see them get more involved. I think that they were kind of trying to get the ball to Jordan Tyson a lot, and Xavier Guillory and Melquan Stovall, I think, are right up there with Jordan Tyson as far as skill level. So and then the fourth downs. We need to talk about the fourth down.
Yeah, so they were 0 for 3 on fourth down. They went for it 4 times, got bailed out on the second drive of the game with the pass interference call. Weird play call.
And that drive later ends up stalling out on a fourth down,
right?
Unfortunately, too. So,
they went for it 4 times. They were 0 for 3. I guess you can say 1 for 3.
1 for 3.5.
Yeah, 1 for 4. But it's just interesting, a lot of going for it in your own territory against a team that you should be able to impose your will on defense. If you punt it, play the field position game, you're probably able to, get the ball back pretty quickly, which they showed in the second half a little bit.
Yeah, I think it was interesting, the sense of urgency that I think that those fourth down attempts showed. I think Kenny came into this game wanting to make a statement about, like, we're going to be the aggressors in every game on offense, and obviously it didn't work out super well today, but I think that that's a decent approach to have, especially when, like, in those 4th and 1 situations, most of these games, it's like Cam Scadaboo is getting 4 yards per carry every time, regardless of what happens. And so when the offense is rolling like that, I love the approach of going for it in your own territory. It's just, I don't think that they ever really had the offensive rhythm to accomplish it today.
My opinion on this is that last year we have a nickname for him on this podcast, Damon. I don't know if you knew this. Dice Roll Dilly. And it's when he does stuff like this where he goes for it, on fourth down in his own territory. I think last year they had
25-yard line, I think it was.
Yeah, I think last year they had a lot less talent. And so doing things like that made a lot more sense because you want to try to hang on to the football. And you have a lesser chance of winning the game. I think this year they don't really need to do that anymore because I think they have a good amount of talent on this team, and I think you kick it away, you punt it, you flip the field, you try to use your you trust your defense in this situation. I don't think luckily they got bailed out by that pass interference call. It was pass interference, but
underthrown.
Yeah, it was underthrown, but as Damon said earlier off the air, then that he might have been doing that on purpose to try to get the pass interference call. But I just think that with this team, I think that their defense is a lot better. I think just all around this football team is a lot better. So you don't really need to do that. If it's beyond the 50-yard line, I'm all for it. But in this situation, I don't. I think you got to try to flip the field. You got a better punting game this year too. Last year they didn't have a very good punting game. So I really don't think that I would like to see this continue, and more field goals.
Damon, and to your point, that fourth down play on the second drive, they ran it at their own 26-yard line. Mm-hmm. So if they don't get it there, I mean, Texas Tech is already in field goal range. So, I mean, some interesting decisions by ASU's offense, whether it's Dillingham, the offensive coordinator, what have you. But yeah, that was just weird to see. I don't expect them to do that much more this season. I think they will learn from this going forward in a different conference. We'll see what happens moving forward. But to the point of like what you were saying, Jesse, about they only have to go 3-6 the rest of the way. This may have been the easiest game left on their schedule. And that's what worries me moving forward for this ASU team. They got Kansas next. They got Utah after that. That could be 3 losses in a row. And does this team spiral downward after 3 losses in a row? That is going to be something to look out for. How do they respond after a loss like this, where they go on the road, they see some good things, but see mostly some sloppiness and some bad things? It's going to be I'm intrigued to see how ASU responds to this, especially going into a bye week and then into the Kansas game. Let's get into the undisciplined part of this real quick. Rouser had the sack that would have given ASU the ball back, only down by 1 score before halftime. And then he had the unsportsmanlike conduct penalty. How many penalties was it today for ASU? Was it 9, Damon, or 8?
Yeah.
8 penalties. That's the second most penalties they've had this season.
Second most penalty yards, too.
And Jesse, we talked about this a lot, and we'll go over this quickly because we're running out of time here. ASU, when they were under Herm Edwards, they were very undisciplined, a lot of penalties, and it really lost them a lot of games during that era. We don't want to see that again during the Dillingham era.
I agree, but I would say that they still had less penalties and less penalty yards than Texas Tech. So the penalties
situationally,
situationally, too, I agree, but I don't really take that away personally as the reason why they lost this game. But they do need to clean it up. I agree with that.
Real quick before we get out of here, Jesse wants to get to one thing, but I want to talk about ASU volleyball real quick. The volleyball team, they won this weekend, or all 3 games that they played this weekend. They are 15-1, correct, Jesse? After
they're 11-1 now.
That's 11-1. Excuse me. 11-1. They just absolutely dominated this tournament that they played at Desert Financial Arena this weekend, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. That's good to see, especially coming off of a loss to Nebraska last week. 3-0, 3-0, 3-0. Long Beach State, Prairie View A&M, and Memphis. Prairie View A&M, Memphis, and Montana State. They beat Long Beach State last Saturday after playing the day before in Lincoln, Nebraska.
I was there last night. There's some serious momentum around this program. There was 3,800 fans there, which is a really good crowd for volleyball. The student section was close to, a non-conference men's basketball game as far as size went, and a lot of them stayed. This is something that I would like to talk about for just a little bit. Is a couple years ago, it's probably the most viral clip you want to say from our podcast. I went off on the ASU students for leaving the UCLA football game early. This year, I have seen them stay around more or longer at the football games. And then I have this volleyball student section yesterday really impressed me. So I like to be fair and balanced. And I think that they're starting to kind of get it. The students are starting to kind of get it and understand that these teams need their support. And then as far as the team itself goes, man, they're just connected.
A connected team is a dangerous one.
Exactly. They're connected. Their bench is super hype. There's a player getting the crowd
Jesse,
pumped up with the
you also
yesterday.
Told me about how awesome JJ Van Niel is.
Oh yeah, that too. So
JJ Van Niel, friend of the program, by the way. Jesse, go ahead.
Yeah,
continue.
he was. There was a ASU staff member carrying out some signs yesterday from like the student section up to, I guess, storage or whatever. And I was following JJ to media, and JJ is like, "Hey, can I help you?" And he helps him.
Doesn't need to do that.
Doesn't need to do that. He's the head coach of the program.
Yeah,
and so
go talk to his team, say like, "Excuse me, pass the guy," but decided to help him out. Listen,
exactly.
That's the type of people ASU employs, and Jesse saw it in first person.
Yeah, I think that
yesterday.
there's definitely a culture change going on overall at this university with the athletic department.
And Jesse, just adding, rough estimate of numbers from this week's the 3 games this week. About 8,000 fans in total from the 3 games this week.
Awesome. Awesome.
Graham Rossini said Friday night was 5th largest ever, too.
Very
Awesome.
cool. Very cool. Jesse, I'll let you have the last word before we get out of here.
Yeah. Al McCoy, he has passed away at the age of 91. I'm not sure that a lot of people knew this, but our friend Jeff Munn let us know that Al was he was called games for Arizona State back in the 60s for football and men's basketball. Obviously, he's the legendary voice of the Phoenix Suns. And, this is not the only thing I do here. About 3 years ago, I helped out the run to the finals on, the play-by-play side of things. And I was, helping out with highlights and everything, and got to work with Al. And it was just such an honor to work with him. It was just great. It was so cool. Like, it was just honestly so cool. And to work with such a legend. And then I met him later that year, like in person finally, and he couldn't have been nicer. Got to spend a little bit of time around him, and just, a wonderful man, a great broadcaster. He's just going to be missed big time.
You can find all of our tributes to Al McCoy on the Arizona Sports app and arizonasports.com, including our videos all over social media and our YouTube channel. That is where you can find our podcast, and on arizonasports.com as well. You can find us on all forms of social media at AZ Sports Devils. For Jesse Morrison and Damon Allred, I'm Jeremy Schnell. We'll see you soon.